How do you do this? Something like this? How do you take on a trove like this and then find the stories and tease them out? I mean, this is kind of unlike anything that journalists have had to do in modern era.
That's such a generous question. Thank you for asking that. Well, I'll give you the real answer. The real answer, first of all, is teamwork. I think of this Epstein work, at least for me personally, as kind of bifurcated into two different eras. Last year, I worked with an incredible team, people like Harry Wilson and our colleagues Ava and Jason and Lauren Etter, and it goes on. And we had access to, it was so many emails to us. It was like about 18,000, more than 18,000 emails. And we spent months together digging and, thinking like, okay, geez, you understand the law, so you dig into lawyers, you understand the investments, you look into that, or money laundering, you look into that. We split it up, we worked together. It was a very, honestly, it was quite a moving experience. It was also extremely grim, as you might imagine. Mm-hmm. But 18,000, that's a pimple. That's nothing compared to what's been happening in these last few weeks. 3.5 million files. I want to be my professional self and make sense of it for you two and for viewers and listeners. But just to be honest, it is hard to make sense of it. The scale alone, just how much material there is here, to sort of meet these documents where they are and to not either be dismissive of them and be like, well, what does it matter? It's so much, or rather I should say to not be overwhelmed by them, and then to not sort of wave our arms and get overly excited about things that aren't really there. So we're splitting it up. I worked with Laura Benitez for this story about Leon Black, David Shearer, our editor. And what we did is we clicked one after another, and we're trying to read them all, trying to put them into chronological order, trying to understand them, trying to understand what they mean, and trying to understand these relationships.
Because not everything's in order, right? And there's redacted stuff, and you've got to kind of sometimes piece things together, correct?
I would be so happy if it were in order. And you know what? I feel very proud of working in this newsroom with journalists who I admire and who I'm fond of. But I want to give a shout out not just to our colleagues across Wall Street journalism who've been looking into Epstein and Leon Black now for years or at least for months, if not years and years in some cases. But in this case, even just readers who are interested, people on Twitter, people who are digging in. It seems it's like, it reminds me of like being in school. It's like a large group project. Everyone's kind of throwing in. People are looking, and it's fun to be digging alongside what feels like kind of a collective effort.
So let's dig in.
Let's talk about that digging. So I just want to throw out some numbers here. Okay. Leon Black has acknowledged paying Jeffrey Epstein $158 million over the years, saying it was for advice on estate and tax planning. The newly released documents, though, that you and the team found said it was from much more than just estate and tax planning. What else did he do?
Well, just to be really, really, really specific, the way I'm going to put it is going to be slightly different from that, which is the way that I'm going to say it is, Leon Black's story up until now has been like something along the lines of, I don't want to overgeneralize for him, but it's been something along the lines of like, look, he gave me tax advice and his tax advice was good and it was worth it. And there's some other things on the side, things like estate planning. And what our story is about, and I hope viewers and listeners will go check out our story called The Leon Black Files. What it's about is some really concrete things. One is an angry mistress. One is an angry mistress of Leon Black's, or to be fair, I think at the time of these emails, she was a former mistress. And Epstein, who by then was a sex offender, he helped Black kind of manage the situation. We can talk about in what ways. And then let's think about sort of off to the side. There are these IRS questions about gifts to another woman. This is going to be a second woman, and the way that Epstein was a fixer for this man, and watching him work. Of course, the best we can do is watching him send and receive emails. But it was quite an experience for me. I've been at this now, writing about Wall Street, writing about money and power here at Bloomberg News for 15 years, maybe more now. But I can't remember the last time I had the feeling of sort of watching history unfold before me, or watching a movie. I don't want to make it sound fun or romanticize it, because it's grim and difficult work. But it really was amazing to see sort of email by email, month by month, year by year, to see how Epstein just goes to work trying to fix the dark secrets of a very important billionaire.
You know what always blows me away from just the various things I've been reading here at Bloomberg and elsewhere when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein is just the level of intimacy that he has with certainly people that we cover so much at Bloomberg, like these titans of finance. I mean, Apollo is kind of an iconic firm in many ways and very revered and still is on Wall Street. And Leon Black created this firm. And so whether it's Epstein helping with family portraits, like that stuck out. Like that's a level, like I understand maybe the estate planning because that's kind of what Epstein was doing, but the involvement in even very personal things is kind of interesting, that level of a relationship.
I think that might be one of the most profound things going on. You simply cannot exaggerate it. The level of involvement and the level of intimacy, personal and professional intimacy that Epstein craved and won from these powerful people. I know for obvious reasons that a lot of people who are interested in Epstein and interested in the Epstein files are drawn to political leaders, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump. That makes sense. These people were presidents and leaders of the free world, as it were. But I want to say a word for just focusing on the financial moguls that are involved, and
who kind of have everything, right? And they're wealthy, and they seem like it's just. I don't know.
That's right. I know what you mean. Do you remember when I worked with Jason on an oral history of Drexel Burnham Lambert? You and I talked about it many years ago.
Yes.
And that of course was Michael Milken and a junk bond empire. And you know who was there back then? Mr. Leon Black.
Right.
And, to track his career, that was a long time ago, it was in the 1980s. But to track Leon Black's career and what he did with Apollo, I think it's really fair to say that he and his peers are a part of a generation that reshaped the landscape of American finance. The private equity was invented before then. I mean, Leon Black didn't personally invent private equity. That wouldn't be fair.
But ran with it.
But what Apollo and what Leon Black did as shaping American finance was important and is important. And I hope that readers will find it important to understand in detail and with fairness and with care and with facts just exactly what Epstein was doing. And some of it was, as you say, like arranging, family portraits or, meeting his young adult kids. But some of it was grim. Some of it, you described that Leon Black sort of would have it all, but clearly he also had problems and issues, and Epstein clearly went to work trying to help some of them.
The art side of this. What was the role of art in your story?
Well, I'll answer your question, which has to do with not only Paul Klee, but also an art book publishing company called Phaidon. But I also,
which is a very famous company that makes very expensive, beautiful books.
That's right. Got nice coffee table books.
Yeah.
I think I have some Phaidon books in our library at home. So I want to try to spell that out. But I also just want to give a quick shout out to some of the reporting that we've been doing elsewhere. There's a great story on Cambodian art. So anyone interested in the Epstein files and art should check out the Bloomberg News piece on Cambodian art. There's also more in this general subject of art in the Epstein files. But in this case, it's fair to say that one of Black's investment vehicles agreed to pay, I want to say, a $1.8 million commission for helping to sell a Paul Klee oil work. And that was about 23% of the sale price. And that money went to one of the women that I was describing before. So, we want to be really careful when we do this reporting. We don't want to put one and one together and get three.
Right.
We don't want to over-describe, and we don't want to under-describe, and we don't want to undersell it. But absolutely, it's fair to say that Black paid a lot of money to one of the women who, I guess, were one of the two women that I described earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of this reporting that you are doing and the team are doing, it's just the tentacles of these stories, and they're not just very simple line. There's just so much to it. You know what I mean? Each aspect of it. And
Yes.
you're right, we want to be very careful, but I think what increasingly we're getting this fuller picture and impact, if you will, of what we simply put as Jeffrey Epstein.
No, I hear
There's
you.
so much more.
I mean, speaking reporter to reporter, I think that sometimes when I'm feeling overwhelmed at work and story subjects seem too hard or too convoluted or too obscure, too opaque, I find that it's sort of, it helps to remember that's like, you know, honestly, they're cliches, but I'm going to use them anyway. It's like, follow the money.
Yeah.
You know, what are we doing here? We're
Amen.
following the money. You know, we're chronicling capitalism. You know, capitalism is interesting and it's important. And I think one
So
way to
great.
describe the Epstein files is that they allow us to chronicle capitalism.